Well, hello, Jess. I want to thank you for posting the outfeed table for the rigid R4512 table saw. I made this table myself. I guess I'm on a roll, sort of copying your projects. I did have some interesting observations making it. And as you can see from the picture, I also completed the miter slots, which weren't that easy to do. But as you can see, it turned out fairly well. The top is made from Baltic birch, and the edges go right around underneath and support the plywood, and they are made from beech. And I cut the beech carefully to make sure it would stay really, really flat. I did have a little bit of a problem with the hinges, getting it just the right height. There we go. You can see how the hinge lifts at the very end, and when I was checking it out, it was on the lift part, and the hinge was holding it a little higher than it would in actual operation. So that meant my outfeed table was just a little bit low, but actually low is okay. It doesn't seem to interact with the piece at all when I'm using the table. You said something about the base of the table being kind of wimpy, and so I used a nice wide piece of board there just to sort of try to stabilize and strengthen that. And I made my leg in the same way that you did, obviously, except all I felt that I needed to support, to keep the leg from sliding up and down, was one dowel sticking through like that. And then if I want to lift the leg, all I have to do is pull that dowel out and then pull up the dovetail plywood and click it up on these little hooks that I had to put on the side. And the reason, I don't know how you fit them in, but they were going to interfere. So I had to put them on the side of the board. So that took me a bit to figure out. Cutting the miter slot was not very easy, and it was kind of a little bit of a surprise after you didn't even put it in your video, so I thought it was just a minor thing. But actually, putting those miter slots in was really quite tricky. And as you can see, what I have to do is find the exact corner to start the cut. And so I use some particle board shelving that has a really, really straight edge as a fence. And then I lined the side of the base of the router up with the very corner of the miter slot. And then I made sure the fence was square to the table. And then away I went. I thought of using a 3/4 inch router bit and just making one swoop at it, but I got nervous and decided to do it in two. So I think I had like a 1/2 inch and just made it 2 cuts. And then after I had the miter slots roughed out, then I took some sandpaper and smoothed them out. And they did work out just fine, but they took a bit of doing. So that process, going back and forth, that took a half an hour. And then I noticed that the miter gauge didn't quite want to go into the slots. Now I realized that I really didn't need to worry about that. The miter gauge is already past the middle of the blade, so it's going to cut anything off that's in front of it. But my first reaction was, oh goodness, I can't really slide the miter gauge across the table. So I took a chisel and cut out a groove so I could move further forward. I don't know if that will ever come into play or not, but it's done. So now the miter gauge slides underneath. The miter gauge slides up to, I think it's about 1.5 inches in, and then stops. And but overall, I'm pretty satisfied with the project. There it is, hinged down with a coat of tung oil on it. I put another tung oil coat on it afterwards. I want it to be fairly tough because it gets used in the shop. The beech takes up the tung oil really well, puts a nice contrast on there. So that was a pleasing result. So thank you very much. I appreciate your help in making that posting, and I hope somebody else makes this too. This is a good project. Thanks. Bye-bye.